Nestled in the Red Hills area of Hyderabad, the Nilofer Hospital makes news from time to time. On any day, one can see several expectant mothers arriving and others leaving with their newborns. But why is this institution called Nilofer Hospital? Who was Nilofer? Why is the hospital named after her? To understand her fascinating and fabulous story, we go to a place far away, to Istanbul in Turkey. In 1922, the Turkish Grand National Assembly abolished the Sultanate of Turkey and nominated Abdülmecid to be the last Khalifa. In Orthodox Islam, the Khalifa was considered as the successor to the Prophet. 2 years later, the Turkish government abolished the Caliphate and sent the royal family into exile. The Khalifa, Abdülmecid, and his daughter Duruşehvar, and his family then sought refuge in Nice in southern France. Along with this family, several other members of the royal household took up residence in nearby areas. Of these was a widow, Adile Sultana, daughter of an earlier Turkish sultan. She was accompanied by her daughter Nilofer. Adile's husband, Salahuddin Merali, had died when Nilofer was just 2 years old. As times were difficult, the Khalifa appealed to Muslim royalty throughout the world for help. At that time, the richest man of the world was the Nizam of Hyderabad, Mir Usman Ali Khan. The Nizam offered the Khalifa a pension of £300 a month. On this pension, the Khalifa and his family survived in Nice. Duruşehvar was tutored at home, but Nilofer was sent to a public school. The strict conditions at the school and the sudden change from Turkey to France meant that Nilofer was not at all able to cope. She became a poor student. A few years later, when the Khalifa's daughter Duruşehvar was of marriageable age, a proposal was brought to the Nizam. It was suggested that Duruşehvar should be married to the Nizam's elder son, Azamja. The Nizam was very pleased with the proposal. He asked the mediator, Maulana Shaukat Ali, to proceed with discussions and details. The Khalifa's side proposed a dowry called Meher-i Muajjal of £40,000. The Nizam was taken aback. After all, the Khalifa was being paid a pension. How could he ask for such a large dowry? The Nizam exclaimed to the mediator that the dowry was large enough to get 2 brides, so both his sons could be married. The Khalifa's side then proposed that Nilofer be married to the Nizam's younger son, Muazzamja, within the stated dowry. The Nizam agreed. The marriages were performed in Nice in November 1931. The 2 princes returned with their brides. As Nilofer was only 15, her mother accompanied her. She also brought a midwife to help with the anticipated pregnancy. When the princes arrived in Hyderabad with their brides, they were given a lavish welcome. They then settled down in their respective homes. Azamja and Duruşehvar were housed in the Bella Vista, and Muazzamja and Nilofer in the Hill Fort building on Nobat Bahar. Azamja was the heir apparent of the Nizam and was being trained for the future. Muazzamja was made the president of the City Improvement Board. The 2 princesses assumed no public responsibilities directly. Their presence caused a buzz in Hyderabad, and they were frequently invited to public functions and private parties. Going against convention, the Nizam took his daughters-in-law with him whenever he attended marriages and events. This caused a good deal of consternation and stirred up Hyderabad society. A couple of years later, Duruşehvar gave birth to a son. There was great joy in the Nizam's household. Nilofer too longed for a child. Some time later, the Nizam celebrated his silver jubilee. There was a flurry of activity during that time. A fabulous function was held at the Jubilee Hall. Gala events were planned and held. Several singers sang in the praise of the Nizam. Despite all the celebrations, Nilofer was in a morose mood. She wanted a child as an expression of motherhood, and also because it would elevate her status. The duty of a princess, she reminded herself, was to deliver an heir and a spare. During the day, her husband, Prince Muazzam, busied himself with affairs of the City Improvement Board. Almost every evening he held a mushaira, where poets attended and read their poetry. Some of the famous names of the day, such as Fani Badayuni, were in constant attendance. Singers such as Begum Akhtar visited regularly and were rewarded handsomely for their efforts. Prince Muazzam was himself a poet of repute. His ghazals complained of the difficulties faced in love. The years passed by. Princess Durushefar delivered yet another son. Once again, Princess Nilofer was consumed by pangs of guilt. Her inability to conceive had driven a wedge between her and her husband. They had always had separate bedrooms on separate floors, but now she rarely saw him. Earlier, they had spent several holidays travelling to Ooty and Kashmir, but the times had now changed. The Second World War had started, and there was austerity in the air. India had been brought into the war on the British side. The Nizam, as the faithful ally of the British government, contributed men and material to Allied forces. Princess Nilofer wholeheartedly participated in the war effort. In aid of the effort, she started several activities. She staged a play at the Lady Haidari Club. As the war progressed, she sought and received training to assist during the air raids. Around this time, her favourite servant absented from duty as she was pregnant. She never came back to work because she died in childbirth. Shocked at the neglect of women's health care, Nilofer plunged into a huge effort to raise funds for child welfare and maternity. At first she involved the higher officials of the Nizam's government. The project began to take shape. Land was identified in the Red Hills area. Leading architects designed the hospital. The construction started. Princess Nilofer left for London to be with her mother. The situation in Hyderabad became more grim. Within the Dominion, there was a group called the Razakars who wanted Hyderabad to hold out for better terms. Finally, the Indian Union sent in its army. This was called police action. Within 3 days, the Nizam's government surrendered. Nilofer was stuck in London. When consulted, her friends advised her to stay out of Hyderabad. Stuck in a foreign country and with limited resources, Nilofer longed to return. Hyderabad was the only home she had known. After several months, when the situation had calmed, she came back. She went to see the Nizam. He had become a shadow of his former self. He stayed within the confines of his palace, King Koti. When Nilofer met him, he kept saying, "Hyderabad is finished." Saddened by what she had seen, she went to see the construction of the hospital. It was nearly complete. Her Hyderabad seemed to disappear, just as the Nizam had said. Princess Nilofer decided to leave. When the hospital was ready for inauguration, she was already far away. She never came back to India again. The hospital is an extraordinary symbol of her love and passion for the welfare of women and children. It is through her efforts that many women have experienced the joy of motherhood.